the Pacific Basin Countries Conference on Waste Management only about a month ago in Canada, and we had a little over 120 countries represented there, and most of the top-level administrators from these countries were present to make sure that ISO 14000 would be implemented by all of their countries. As such, it is becoming, even though it is not being mandated, I would say, it is as though it is being mandated without which no country can sell or buy.
Mm-hmm.
So it is becoming not as a trade barrier, but a trading enhancement policy.
Very good. Thank you. We now have a live call from Universidad Iberoamericana in Torreon, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. The question that we have has to do with legislation. Environmental legislation in Mexico has already accepted and applied these ISO standards, 14,000 standards to all the industrial processes. And the other question that I have is, to what degree do are industrialized countries applying these same standards? Thank you.
Well, I should point out that the ISO 14000 series isn't mandated by government. It's really a market-driven standard. I know that Semarnap is enforcing laws in Mexico that are much like ISO in several respects, particularly with regard to the environmental audit provisions. But as a whole, ISO is left to companies to adopt, and they adopt it because of their own perceived self-interest, the fact that they think this will enhance the acceptability of their products to their customers.
Thank you. We now have another call from Universidad Tecnológica de Nezahualcóyotl. Go ahead, please.
What is the relationship between the ISO 14000 and the government regulations? And the second question is, how long do you think will take for ISO 14000 to be applied and implemented in countries like Mexico, for example?
Well, we had a seminar just recently in Tijuana talking about ISO 14000. So I know that many companies in Mexico are very interested in ISO, the equal sign process. I think that it's spreading throughout the cities of Mexico. It has yet to be adopted. It is not yet a final document. They're still drafting the final guidance documents. So it will take several months before we have a guidance that we can all rely on. And of course, part of this process is being registered, where independent registrars go to companies and prove or examine the fact that the company is in compliance. This can't happen until the guidance documents are finalized, and so we're not likely to see the first registered ISO 14000 companies until sometime next year. But it's clearly growing and spreading.
What about the issue of 14,000 in developing countries?
There were quite a lot of questions raised by the developing countries as to the cost of implementing it.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of implementing it is going to depend on the size of the company and the type of products that they produce. If the company is going to be large, producing too many different products, at the same time marketing them throughout the world, is going to be a little complex. But if it's going to be a small Papa and Mama store producing a single product, then the cost of it will be very little, and in fact, it should not be costly at all to implement it.
Okay. We have another call now from Cimentos Opasco in the state of Tabasco, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
The question is, the certifying enterprises of ISO 9000, are they the same ones that certify in the ISO 14000 standards?
Essentially, yes. There'll be independent auditors who examine the company's policies, the manner in which the policies are implemented, certify the testing equipment, the sampling equipment, and through this independent auditor process, the company will be able to register as an ISO 14000 participant.
And in adding to that, I'll also look into how much of technical help that you can get from that company before ISO 14000 can be implemented with reference to your company.
We have another call from Comisión Federal de Electricidad in Mexico. Go ahead, please. Good morning.
The cost of waste management, industrial waste management, have a cost. What is the degree of acceptance of this process in the enterprises that have a long time, that have been in the market for a long time, because this will have some incidence on the profitability of those enterprises?
Well, it's quite true that there is a cost to the implementation of new procedures, but what's hoped and what has been the experience in other places is that sometimes there are significant savings, that profitability is enhanced by getting a better control of your waste stream, eliminating the cost of disposing of that waste, perhaps reducing the cost of acquiring natural resources at the front end of the project or the process. And so there are opportunities to save money and enhance profitability through better waste control.
Are there any standards that one could look to in terms of percentage of expenditure or so forth that deal with waste management issues that a company might look as a benchmark?
I'm not familiar as to whether we have standards, but I know the experience has been that sometimes the cost of disposing of waste, which can be very significant, can be halved or even reduced more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that depends on the type of waste that you're also producing. And if the waste has been collecting without any care for a long, long time, then it's going to become very costly. In my experience, like about a month ago when I was on a World Bank project in India, I saw about 40 to 50,000 acres of land contaminated with chromium and chromium salts and other minerals from tanneries. And it also affected human beings. And there's a lot of people coming down with pancreatic cancers. In this case, your liability increases because you have not taken the first steps to control the waste. So the longer you wait to dispose of the waste, the higher the cost is going to be and the higher the liability will be.
I see. Next we have a call from Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá. Good morning. Go ahead, please.
The countries of Latin America have a shortage of capital. How can we define priorities to apply the monetary resources, financial resources that we have in order to apply the ISO 14000 system on the different businesses when that same money is required for technological changes of our products?
We have competing demands on our resources always.
Well, I think the point that Dr. Chalam just made is a significant one. If you ignore putting resources into the proper control and management of your waste, you risk putting your population at risk, you risk putting the productivity of your lands at risk, agricultural production can drop, people can get sick. These are costs which are avoided now only at your peril. And so taking steps now is saving for the future.
And not only that, if you do not take the steps while you're producing your products, your end product quality is also not going to be good. And that is where you have to start looking at alternative methods and substitution methods, at the same time improving the quality of your end product. That way your profitability can be increased if you would also have the waste management under control.
Thank you for all your calls, and we have many coming in. This one from Comisión Federal de Electricidad in Mexico. Go ahead, please.
The success of the application of environmental policies that are adequate really depends on the awareness and participation of all the sectors of society. Is it feasible to apply such policies in not developed countries? And what would be the agencies, the world agencies who should be controlling this and making sure that they are applied?
This goes back to one of the questions in our previous sessions about the monitoring, regulation, control of these matters in different countries.
Well, of course, it's very difficult to try and talk about world agencies who will police the world and ensure that everybody is in compliance. And this is one of the great attractions of the ISO process, which rather than require a policing agency, a worldwide policing agency, it's driven by market forces. It's driven by the company's own perception that this is how I can sell my products around the world. By complying with the ISO guidelines and becoming an environmentally sensitive company, I can become more profitable. I can attract customers who will rely on the fact that I'm conducting business in a responsible way.
Yes, we find that most of the countries are actually voluntarily taking part. In fact, few countries were only singled out that were not actually are part of the ISO 14000. For example, like a remote country like Nepal. It is not part of it. Or some island groups that are developing newly, they are not part of it yet. But all the other major industrialized countries and the developing countries are becoming aware of it. And recently, China, Republic of China, People's Republic of China, has established a complete agency under its control just to look at ISO 14000.
We have another call now from Argentina, Universidad Nacional de Córdoba. Good morning. Go ahead, please.
What is your, are there any norms, standards within ISO 14000 to relatively evaluate the impact of certain toxic wastes, particularly everything that has to do with concentration, quantity, permanence, or effects, possible effects? And how can we, if this is in existence, how can we get some information about it?
Well, the ISO 14000 process starts with benchmarking a company's current capabilities, its current success at dealing with its waste stream, and then measures the achievements that you've made from your current standards. So again, we avoid one worldwide standard. We avoid trying to set up a standard that may be reachable in some countries or companies and not in others, and instead we focus on individual achievement with each company making gains against its own past history.
And in the ISO 14000, there's also another thing that you would like to look at is the life cycle assessment of the waste or the product that you're actually producing. Here you have to be very careful how the product is being manufactured right from the beginning till the end, so as the quality of your product improves and is highly marketable. So whether it is a very poor country or whether it's a rich country, the product that is marketable becomes the question. And that is where ISO 14000 is going to control.
We have a call now from Rio de Janeiro, Key TV. Good morning. Go ahead.
The obligation to implement these norms, how can the enterprises from the third world implement them when they don't have enough money and financial resources? Wouldn't they be at a very great disadvantage if you look at it vis-a-vis the industrialized countries when that do have resources to apply these norms and control waste management?
I think this is a very, very important yet difficult question for developing countries in terms of the strategies that might be employed to gain the resources to begin the implementation process. Do you have any ideas on that issue?
Well, I can put it this way. The more the products you produce, the more money you're going to make. And that means out of that more money you make, the more money you have to put away for waste management. So if your products are going up and selling better and you're making more money, you also have to take care of the environment, because the environment will become the limiting factor where you cannot produce anymore. So as such, if you take the economical aspect of it, then it just becomes important to you that conserving what you have is what you're going to put out in the future.
Mr. Opper?
It's also fair to say that this is one of the controversial aspects of the ISO negotiations. There's a tremendous concern that this will disadvantage developing companies and give the industrialized countries a leg up in the international marketplace. It's certainly something that's discussed openly and at length, so there are a number of delegations to the ISO conferences that try and level that playing field and make sure that it doesn't create an unfair advantage. But I think Dr. Chalam's point is right on the mark. If you want to make money and to succeed, you've got to come up with products that you can sell in the world marketplace. And ISO 14000 should assist that process rather than be an obstacle to it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would add, it will enhance your marketability of the product. It is not a barrier. It is going to help you.
But it's a reality that has to be dealt with.
That is correct.
Yes. We have now a call from Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just as Dr. Chalam just indicated, adopting norm standards for the environment is a problem of education. What programs or materials do we have available in order to promote the ISO 14000 standards amongst entrepreneurs, ONGs, and other agencies, and how do we get those materials?
Well, that's a fun question to answer. How do we promote it? Television shows such as this one. Yeah. This is what part of the process where people who are messengers of this new policy are trying to make sure that the world is aware it is occurring. I think there's a tremendous amount of attention being given to the ISO process. The success of the ISO 9000 guidelines has sensitized people to the need to follow these developments, and we see them growing throughout the world.
I agree with Mr. Opper here, because right now you are being educated on ISO 14000. You are becoming aware of ISO 14000, and just word of mouth is going to go on itself. And other printed materials are also being produced by international agencies that should be made available to the various countries, member countries, very soon.
Very good. We now have a call from Universidad Tecnológica de Tula-Tepeji. Good morning, and go ahead, please.
I'm calling from the Technological University. The question is ISO 9000 at a certain time can be restructured, and can it be adapted to the industrial environment? What are the obstacles that you consider are part of the environmental policies of international policies of these countries? Because it is because of that that ISO 9000 has not been accepted in some countries.
The whole ISO process is one of evolving standards, although it's slow to evolve once adapted because it is a complex process. A lot of time and energy goes into sending delegations. ISO 9000, of course, already exists. It's been promulgated as a set of standards. Can it be changed to address different changes in the world? Yes, it can. Delegations can go to the ISO conferences and discuss amendments to the guidance documents. ISO 14000, we have an even better advantage in that it is still being drafted, and there's still a tremendous opportunity to send delegations to have an impact on what these final guidelines will look like, to ensure that concerns about inappropriate or disproportional impacts on developing countries and developed countries can be addressed. There's an opportunity to do that right now, and it should be grasped while the day is with us.
We have a call now from Instituto Tecnológico de Colima.
Muy bien, adelante. Good morning. We're sending your greetings, and we have two questions. What is the risk that the population has with the radioactive wastes that are buried underground, and what is the difference with ISO 14000?
ISO 14000 actually addresses quite a bit of that waste also. The waste that has already been buried, we have to make sure it is safe. It is not going to leach into our water systems. It's not going to become part of the products that we are going to manufacture and send out. And as such, we are looking at product quality. And the things that we have already done, just as I put it in my talk a little bit earlier, the correcting part of it is going to be a little bit expensive, and radioactive compounds are being addressed in that manner.
I suppose that's one of the most troublesome types of waste streams throughout the world, certainly even if not more so in the industrialized nations where there are more products being developed through the use of radioactive materials. And I guess my only thought was it really has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis to determine whether any particular disposal site is dangerous or not. It's hard to generalize without examining the particular facts of that disposal site.
Yeah, excuse me. Even in our industrial countries, we do have the dilemma, especially when the radioactive chemical is mixed with other chemicals that are not radioactive. When this material is purely radioactive, we dilute it and send it to one of our sites to be buried. And if it's pure chemical, then we know how to handle it also. But once it is mixed, that is where our problem really starts. And even the industrial countries right now, including Japan, Germany, Britain, and the United States, we are in a dilemma. And we are still trying to work it out.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry we're out of time now. Thank you very much, Mr. Opper, Dr. Chalam. We hope that you have enjoyed this video conference, and we will continue transmitting programs on the latest technologies available to improve your organization's productivity and effectiveness in the area of strategic resource management. We invite you to participate on November 9th in the 7th and final video conference in our Management Systems for the 21st Century series entitled Customer Service and Global Competitiveness, Foundations for Excellence. We also look forward to your participation on November 29th in the last program of the Strategic Resource Management series entitled Human Resources and Health, Integrated Strategies to Improve Productivity. And for additional information on International Training Center programs, you may consult your print package, where you will find the dates and specific topics of our 3 series. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you very much, and see you soon.